本命は元締めの祭りやフェスタ。海王類の海難事故で死んだはずのロジャー時代の大物海賊。
おまけにこいつもだ。
What's up, everybody? We're back at it again with some Smoker gameplay, and now I know it looks like I'm in an earthquake right now, but trust me, I'll stop slapping my camera shortly into the video here, as I think I didn't notice that I was kind of leaning against it at the beginning of this match here. But we're going to be playing against some Doflamingo. Everybody knows Doflamingo, one of the biggest menaces of the format currently. Will I be able to handle it here? And we did keep a pretty solid hand here. That brand new going slightly off frame. Or I think that was an Ice Age. I don't know. I can't even remember at this point. I'm just so worried about the shaking. But anyways, we have one of the best cards for the matchup in my starting hand, and that is that 8-cost Sabo. That is a new tech I added in for the deck. So if you checked out the deck list just in the description below, you'll notice I wasn't running a Sabo at the time, and that was a Suru actually that I picked up in hand, and then it's Shiki off of life here. But yeah, so 8-cost Sabo. On a 9 or 10 Dawn play, you'll be able to KO 2 4-drops, which is exactly what you want to do to kind of swing the tempo to your advantage here. As my opponent kind of does the pretty typical Dofi things, going first, plays a Perona, then plays out a Boa, and gonna continue the nonsense here as I'm kind of looking for something to do at this point. I don't have a ton to do, and so likely what I might try to do is just swing some 6s here, as I don't really want to commit anything additional to the board at this point. And we're going to go ahead and swing a 6k with brand new at lead here. When I don't have a ton to do, I just typically will try to pressure my opponent. We can use the Smoker's ability to -1 on the Perona to be able to swing 7k here. So opponent takes the 6k hit, takes the 7k hit. That is a lot of life here going into their third turn of the game. I am pretty happy to see it. I love to see Doflamingo as low as possible because that allows me to finish the game here. I've got a pretty solid hand. I've got, 3 2Ks, a blocker, a Tashigi. Tashigi is very, very good in this matchup as well, as I can play this on curve on this next turn to take out one of my opponent's threats, to try to keep them under control somewhat, as my opponent plays out a Sengoku, adds a Crocodile 2K to hand, and he's got 4 Dawn open. That 4 Dawn could mean one of two things, either the Boa blocker or a Jinbei, but instead a Weevil coming down here. Gonna go ahead and swing 5k into the brand new. I'm just gonna let that go. Brand new did its job. Brand new swung in. It got some life, and we're moving on with our life here. We're picking up a second Ice Age here. My hand is really filling out here. I have a pretty solid curve for the next few turns. The one thing that I am probably not going to play on curve, though, is that Gecko Moria. One of the things about playing the Smoker deck is typically you're not going to see a ton in trash in comparison to good old Lucci. But so by the time I get to that 8 Dawn turn, I might not have enough to even make it worth it at this point. We're going to go ahead and do the good old Tashigi Shuffle special. Tashigi's going to come in -4 on the Weevil. I'm going to use Smoker's ability to -1 on the Perona, giving my leader +1000, and then we'll use Tashigi's ability to trash it. It's the same song and dance. That's why we play Smoker, because Tashigi is locked to the Smoker leader. So Tashigi, one of the best cards in the deck, one of the best cards in this matchup as well, as she can easily come down and deal with one of my opponent's threats. My opponent's showing me another Boa Hancock. Honestly, outside of Jinbei, probably one of the best cards in the Doflamingo deck that they got right now, as it allows them to set up their leader's top and also allow them to play, to just use their leader's ability here. Opponent going to flip out a Jinbei. That Jinbei is going to play out, oh man, Edward Weevil here, and my opponent's board is almost absolutely full of 5 and 6Ks here other than the Sengoku. We're going to counter out of that. I do typically like to stay pretty high on life against Doflamingo. I don't want to catch myself in a position where I have to play unoptimally to try to survive here. So I will counter out when possible, and we find, oh man, I'm getting rewarded here. One of the best plays here. I wasn't sure what I was going to do on this 8 Dawn turn if I hadn't seen that Jack come to hand. Likely I would have played out the Sabo blocker to try to find some new targets, maybe fill up the yard a little bit for Gecko Moria, and then do some swinging here. But that nice little Jack is going to come down. The Jack is likely just going to clean up either a Boa blocker or a nice Edward Weevil. We are playing it on our 8 Dawn turn, which means we can attach one to lead, -1 on something, and then play Jack down to KO it using Jack's activated ability. Jack outside is one of the best cards for this matchup outside of 8-cost Sabo. Jack, I'm running more than just one copy. Nice little just one copy of Sabo in this deck. We're going to go ahead and start with a 6k. I think that 6k is going into Jinbei here. We're going to attempt to take the card out of its slider, and we're going to swing another 6k at lead. Then we're going to slap the camera and -1 cost on the Weevil as we're going to pull out a Jack here. Jack's going to tap, do what Jack does best. I'm going to continue to try to resolve Jack's ability in the opposite order because I, for some reason, think that Jack's ability is a discard then draw, but it is not. It is not like the old Sakazuki leader. This is a draw, then a discard, then a KO of a 3 cost or less. If my opponent doesn't red rock the Jack here, that Jack is going to be sitting pretty. But speaking of red rocks, I can see into the future because that Jack is gone for this world. But you know what that means? That means this Sabo on this next turn will likely sit around, as my opponent may not have as many applicable ways to get rid of my higher cost characters here. Opponent's going to go ahead and just swing AK into Tashigi here. I could use a blocker and a 2k to get out of that, but I don't see it worth it at this point. I do want to kind of use the blockers as much as possible. Opponent's going to swing 5k. I'm just going to use that Borsellino as it does allow me to get a decent target for Gecko Moria. Speaking of decent targets, that's a Rebecca in hand. One of the best targets for Gecko Moria in this specific deck since we don't run 4-cost Lucci. We're getting to that point where if you're enjoying this type of content, if you're sticking around, you're enjoying this gameplay, definitely join the crew and throw us a subscribe. I'm releasing content like this pretty often throughout the week. We try out lots of different decks, even though right now, if you looked at my channel, you'd think I was on a bit of a smoker tirade, but man, do I love me some Smokey. But yeah, join the crew. We're always making gameplay like this, going over tips and tricks and criticizing my past plays as we play out one of the best cards in the matchup. That is 8-cost Sabo. I attach 2 to lead, swing 7k into one of the bodies, and then I will play Sabo down to KO 2 of the other bodies. I played it in that specific order because I didn't want my opponent to know that I was going to slam down a Sabo here. A Sabo is a very unknown tech in this specific deck. So just swinging 7 into Jinbei before doing anything else gave my opponent as little knowledge as possible, not letting them know that I would likely clear the rest or most of their board after the fact. Opponent's going to go ahead and just swing. He's going to attach 2. He's going to go 7k at lead, going to activate the effect. Going to play out another Jinbei. I'd hate to see it. Jinbei is going to pull in the Trafalgar Law. Trafalgar Law is just going to bounce back the Sengoku to hand, and then that's a 7k coming at lead here. Picking up another Borsellino off the top. Opponent's going to play out another Sengoku. Opponent has just so many eyes on the top of his deck here. Pulls out a Edward Weevil here. Though opponent only has 3 Dawn, which basically means he can't resolve anything that he's played at this point. So opponent with 3 Dawn left, a tapped Jinbei and a Boa. I've noticed in this specific matchup, my opponent has pretty much been leaving Boa as a blocker at all times. I don't know if I like that play. I try to be as aggressive as possible with my Boas, and we'll see if my opponent decides to change the gameplay in here as he plays out a Perona. Perona's going to let you look at top 5, try to find something nice to stack the deck with so he can put some more stuff into play off of Doflamingo on the following turn. I'm going to shake my camera around a little bit more as we're going to pass back to my turn and take a look there. What do you think of that Dawn? That Dawn is from the best, so PRBR, or PRB. I think I just said that wrong. The set here, I actually did an opening. There's a link to it in the description below because we're currently running a giveaway as a part of that specific opening. So if you watch the video and then get to the part where I talk about the giveaway, you could potentially win some cards here, some secret rares, an extended art card, as well as some awesome Jolly Roger playable cards and super rares that are playable as well. I make sure I give away playable cards because I want you to play with them. I don't want them to just go in a bulk binder. We're gonna go ahead and swing 9k here. So we play the Shiki out. We pop the blocker, Boa blocker. And then we're going to sit 9k at lead, and then we're going to play out the Sabo. That's like a perfect 10 Dawn play. Tashigi to pop something, Sabo to protect everything, as well as be a nice little blocker to clear some of these not as great cards out of your hand. I end up picking up a 2k and a 1k Tashigi off of the specific cycle. Pretty nice here, though. KO protection, not very useful into Doflamingo, as Doflamingo will likely Gravity Blade in situations like these, and man, it's like I read my opponent's mind. My opponent's going to Gravity Blade those both. I hate to see it, but they both did their jobs. One of them took care of an annoying Boa blocker, and the other one cycled out my hand, so I'm happy to see it. Here on this next turn, we have the ability to play out another Tashigi. We could also go for a really nice Gecko Moria play here to try to continue to establish my board here, as I'm going to try to counter out as many things as possible at this point. to make sure that I can kind of stay alive. Another 6k lead, going to counter out of that. Going to go down to 2 life here. My opponent has that 2 life. And we're going to draw another Gecko Moria. That pretty much means I'm going for a Gecko Moria turn, as I don't really have anything else to do. And I think a Tashigi just isn't enough in this current stand. So we could attach 2 to lead, -1 on the Perona, and then swing 8k, 9k to potentially whittle away my opponent's life here, and then play a Gecko Moria. The Moria would bring back likely a Rebecca and probably a brand new. The Rebecca could then get back another 2k counter in the form of a Tashigi 2k, or the what's his name? The other guy, the 5 cost 2k. So I think that's likely what we're going to do here. That's probably the most efficient play on this specific turn, as playing the Tashigi out to KO one thing probably isn't enough. I'd rather establish a big body, a blocker, and draw some cards. We're going to send 8k at lead just like I said I would. And I think we're just going to go thinking here, do we want to send the 9k at lead, or do we want to deal with a body? There's a little bit of fear in my mind that we could get hit with something gross. With not a lot of counter in my hand, we're going to send the 9 at Jinbei. So a little bit of fear on my side, potentially of maybe my opponent top decking a Perfume Femur to get past my blocker. So we're just going to go ahead and we're actually going to grab out the Sengoku, another awesome play for the Smoker deck. Sengoku is going to allow me to trash 2 cards from my hand that are of the Navy type and draw 3 cards. So we're going to get rid of that Tashigi and that Hina, and then draw 3 cards here, trading out a 1k and a counter for 2 1ks and a counterless card. And then we're going to play out Rebecca. Rebecca is likely just going to grab back a nice little 2k counter, as I do want to play as safe as possible at this point. And then Rebecca will probably let me play my Brook from hand, as I could grab back a Navy card and play another Sengoku from hand, but then that at this point it's probably not worth doing that. I'd likely just play the Brook out. The Brook's gonna come down and clear out something. Brook's gonna just take out the Perona on play, which is pretty nice. So now my opponent only has 3 attackers. I've got a blocker and 3k in hand, as well as 2 unknowns in my life. Feeling pretty confident at this point. If my opponent slams down a Kaido, I'm not even afraid of it, as I've got enough applicable attackers at this point, with my opponent only at 1 life, to kind of finish the game here. We were able to just continue to control the board throughout most of the game. We're relying on Tashigis, as well as that Sabo really pulled the board down, and then just going on there. A little thumbs up off to the side from one of the players here. And yeah, I think this game was pretty easily written here, as my opponent's going to go ahead and I think just going to thumbing 7 Dawn. What's that 7 Dawn going to be used for? Another Gravity Blade. We're going to bottom deck the Rebecca and the Brook, which honestly I'm fine with this point. Does not leave my opponent enough Dawn to, contest with one of my bigger characters. So my opponent's just going to swing 7k. He's going to activate. It's going to be a Perfume Femur. It's one of the cards I was worried about, but we're just going to take that and go to 1 life here. Opponent swinging a 5k here. I think just going to give him a 1k counter, because I don't want to go to 0 at this point, just in case I'm not able to finish the game. Not sure how many cards are in my opponent's hand, likely 5 or so. And we'll go ahead, and I think this is the turn to just go for it at this point. We're going to likely just start with a nice little 9k with Gecko Moria, and then who knows, we could go for something even spicier here, as just kind of pressuring my opponent's life. But my opponent's been taking a lot of hits. I know he has at least a Weevil in hand, as he searched for a Weevil earlier and never played it. We're just going to go 19k lead, and opponent's going to show me a 2k, a 1k, a 1k, and a 1k in the Weevil. So opponent did not have enough to counter out of that. Had a Pudding in hand too. If he Puddinged me quite early in the game, I maybe would have been at a different spot losing that Sabo, but luckily at the time my opponent didn't have a Pudding. So as I always say, play around the pudding to the best of your degree. Just make sure they don't draw it. If you like this type of content, definitely leave a like, join the crew, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.